when they said, come let us go to the house of the Lord. I was glad when they say, come let us go to the church with no walls. You are my brother, you are my sister. From all over the world we are united in the house of God, in the church with no walls.
Welcome to this edition of the Church with No Walls podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dearbone, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by a friend of mine. She is the executive director of The Foundry here in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and she has done a masterful job working with it. And it's a unique organization and an organization that's close to my heart because my daughter attends The Foundry. So with that, I'd like to welcome Shauna Wood to the podcast. Welcome, Shauna.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, Shauna, like I said, you are in charge of the Foundry, which for anybody for people in Bowling Green, Warren County, South Central Kentucky, may be familiar with the Foundry, but for somebody who isn't familiar with the Foundry and the work that the Foundry does, because it's multifaceted, just tell us a little bit about what is the Foundry.
Awesome. So the Foundry Christian Community Center was started about 15 years ago. And the idea was, hey, we've got a little pocket of poverty where all of the demographics are very off from the rest of the city and the county. So what does it look like to be light in that area? An area that's educationally and economically depressed. So what that looks like on a day-to-day is that we run a full-time preschool program. We have after-school care for elementary age kiddos. We do wraparound supports for our families who are in crisis. We offer fitness classes for the community in the evenings, and we offer community events, really trying to grow those relationships and connect people.
And so you said it started 15 years ago. Where did the Foundry come from? You kind of explained the idea. So how did you guys model the Foundry? Was it off of certain other places that you've seen? How did the Foundry come to take the form that it's in now?
That's a great question. So it really, my understanding, because I wasn't a part of it at that time, but my understanding was that there was a pastor in town and he just started to ask curious questions. What does it look like to be light in this community? What does it look like to really have an impact? How do you step into an area that has faced generational poverty and shift things? How do you come in and grow relationships with people? So they started looking at a lot of research. They started exploring what's happening in other places in the United States. One of the models that stood out was the Harlem Children's Zone that started out, transforming one block. And now they have built out to having an impact on 97 blocks and totally transformed that city. And so the model that they had was, hey, let's engage with the child even before they're born. Let's engage with mom when she's pregnant and then walk with that family until that child has graduated high school and is either in college or career. So we call that the cradle-to-career model. They really thought that there was a lot of merit in that, the original vision committee. And so that was kind of the model. It's also very holistic. So we're recognizing that we need to, yes, address education because there's a lot of benefits. We know if you want to get somebody out of poverty, education is a key component, but we also have to address the fact that they're in a human body. So we need to address health and wellness. And if we're addressing the mind through education and health and wellness, we also need to address that spiritual component because we are holistic and intertwined as human beings. So let's meet the whole person in order to impact the whole community.
And so you mentioned the spiritual component of it. To me, that's one of the things I love the most about the Foundry is that it's unabashedly spiritual. Your kids are going to go there and they're going to learn about God. They're going to learn about Christ. They're going to learn about what happened. I mean, I know my little girl is talking about the Bible and what happened on Easter Sunday and all those things, which makes me feel good. And for the Foundry, in your opinion, would there be a big piece missing if the spiritual aspect of it wasn't there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that is our secret sauce because there's a lot of people doing really fantastic things in the education realm. But if you don't start really addressing that God-sized hole in people's hearts, then the transformation is limited.
And so, especially with the young kids, because you have them for after school, you have them for preschool, how do you go about sharing the word of Christ with those young children so that way they understand and they can take it with them as they go on through life and through education?
So it's easy. We just use small words, you know, but I think a lot of times we as adults try to over intellectualize things and we don't realize, there was a reason that Jesus said that the children are the model for what it's going to look like in the kingdom. And so we just share easy, simple truths with them, and they don't question the way adults do. They just believe us. And so we're able just to share stories. Our preschool program utilizes an Abeka curriculum that basically just, we have a big picture card and we show a Bible story picture, and then the teacher tells that story in very simple words. And then all week long, they kind of build on that with little preschool songs that are appropriate and memory verses and that kind of thing, really hiding the truth in their hearts. And we pray over meals. When the kids have lunch every day, they pray over their meal. And I can't tell you how many parents have come to me and said, we never prayed in our home until my child, after being in the preschool program, started telling the parents, we need to bless the food. We need to say thank you to Jesus for our food. And so then the whole family started praying. There have been multiple families that, for whatever reason, had never attended church. And, with time, they've started asking questions about, well, where do you go to church? Well, what are some churches nearby? And just those small steps, families that are now participating and have plugged into local churches. And it's just itty bitty bitty little baby steps all the way. But I tell you, the fruit in these children's hearts is awesome. So we do continue that biblical training in our after school program with elementary age kiddos. We have fantastic staff, and our fine arts specialist actually just really, it was on her heart to tie in Bible stories with all of the art lessons this year. And so the kids, they're like, are we coming to art or are we coming to Bible, Miss Brittany? And so, but they're learning, and those seeds are being planted and the ground of their heart is being tilled and watered. And we had a couple of years ago in our summer camp, a dozen kids that made decisions for Christ. And none of it was forced. It was just gently offering invitations, which aligns with what we see, in the church in America, that 4 to 14 window of the majority of believers as adults accepted the Lord between ages 4 and 14. Well, you've got to be doing a lot of tilling and seed planting and watering at those early ages in order for them to come to where they want to make that decision as a young person.
I love that answer. And I love the fact that, it's not a forced thing, but it is allowing them the chance to learn about God and about Christ and make the decisions from there. Another thing I love about what happens at the Foundry is it's a buy-in from the community. So it's not just, okay, send us your kids for a few hours or for the day, and then the family doesn't really have any connection to it. But the events that happen on the weekends, when you have like the princess tea or you have something for the holidays where the families can come and maybe the kids are getting face paint, they're getting food, they're having Easter egg hunts, all those things, and the family gets to be a part of it as well. How important is that to have that level of family buy-in and allow them to be a part of it and not just a place to drop off their kid while they're at work or something like that?
I think it's critical for the transformation that we want to see because we're playing the long game. We know things aren't going to shift today. Things may not shift tomorrow, but we're looking at how do we have things shift within these families over the next several years, over that child's lifetime. And so we have the privilege of walking with families for a certain number of years. Let's say we walk with them for 10 years. That would be fantastic. But that child-parent relationship, hopefully it's a healthy one, and they're walking together for lifetimes. So we feel like it's our job and our duty to engage with those parents and really equip and empower parents so that they feel confident in their ability to be their child's teacher. And those relationships, I mean, that's where we see transformation, is through relationship. It's through community. And so being able to have that with our parents, I mean, our after school, well, all of our staff do a phenomenal job. I get to see more of the interaction between our parents and our after school staff, because it's a longer window than just a quick pickup line. And it's awesome to see our staff asking our parents, hey, how did that test go that you were studying for in your classes at Western? How that medical test result come back? Because they know the parents and they're walking with them and they're encouraging them. So it's a huge piece.
And so, how many families does the Foundry currently work with or are connected with?
So we have 48 preschoolers and 48 after schoolers. And obviously we have some siblings in there. So I would guesstimate we're probably talking about 65, 70 families.
And then just talk about how that growth has happened because every year you've got more and more people who need it and want that type of childcare, of connection with the Foundry. So talk about kind of how the growth has happened over what you've seen.
So initially, we just had the preschool program. And so then they were seeing the need for after school. So they added in that elementary after school component. And we've had, over time, as resources have been available, we've been able to expand the number of children we serve. Another way that we've really been able to expand our impact, we have a parent and community council that meets quarterly, and they help guide us, because never do we want to be an outsider who's saying, this is what you need, right? You need to talk to the person living the life to know what they need. And so they were the ones that told us, you know what, we need healthy ways to deal with stress. And we have limited opportunities for physical health because of the cost of membership, because the transportation that's required to get to a gym, because of lack of childcare, all of these obstacles. And so out of that birthed our community fitness classes that are in the evenings. We've had participants from age 3 up through 93 who have participated in those. We've got yoga one night, cardio drumming 2 nights a week. And that's been another really awesome way, because it's very expensive to do childcare, your child to staff ratios and that kind of thing. But you don't have all of those regulations when you interact with adults. And so we've been able to really expand the number of families that we touch their lives through those fitness classes in the evenings.
And so how have you seen the Foundry? Obviously, it's based in one part of town and
Mhm.
kind of works not necessarily specifically with that group, but that's kind of the area. How have you seen the rest of the community of South Central Kentucky, Bowling Green, Warren County, embrace the Foundry and kind of help and take in the Foundry as part of, the mission that the Foundry does?
So the initial church that the pastor had the very first thought, and that quickly spread from one church to about 5 churches. But none of those churches are actually located in the area where the Foundry is located. So we started out from the get-go having other people engaged in the community. And so from there, we've added in like our community events that happen once a month. We have community partners from all across Bowling Green and Warren County who've come and who have engaged with those. Our fitness classes, actually, people are driving a significant amount. They're driving from all over town to come to the fitness classes. And I feel like it's because we are facing an epidemic of isolation. And so when people encounter genuine love and real relationship and real community, they want to be a part of it. And so we've seen the area, we were really highly concentrated in less than a zip code. And so that has expanded to more fully most of that zip code. But we still have, when the offerings and availability are there, other people in the city and the county driving over to engage and just experience that.
And I think the testament to the Foundry is been able to connect with the county schools and now be able to not even just have kids that are connected to it, but those kids are now sharing a building with elementary or preschool kids for the county, which A allows for bigger space for the Foundry children to be able to run and play and learn in an environment, but it also just shows the commitment to the Foundry that the community and our education community especially is taking into the Foundry.
Absolutely. We have a very unique preschool public partnership for our preschool program. I think that we need to accept and realize the impacts that we've had in a very positive way. It's only been a few years that our county has offered full day preschool, and it was because they saw the Foundry. We were filling in the gaps. If a child was in morning preschool, we'd be afternoon preschool. If a child was in afternoon preschool, we'd be morning preschool for them. And the results that those kids were having when it came to standardized testing at the end of the year were so impressive that the public schools actually changed their model to doing full day preschool because of the success the Foundry was having. And so, even it's a testament to their leadership for being open minded and being willing to engage with us and say, okay, well, listen, we've got a small good thing going. How can we grow that? How can we partner? And our city schools have been great too. We've done multiple partnerships with our city schools. They actually at one point had preschool classes inside of our building. So I just have to brag on Bowling Green. I mean, our partners are amazing, and there are so many of them. I always get nervous. Like, I don't like to list our partners because I know I'm leaving somebody off. Because people come to me from all walks of life who have engaged with us at in any of our events, and they just say, how can I be involved more? How can I do this again? Can I go ahead and sign up to be back next month? Because everybody likes it, fills people's hearts to know that you're doing good and you're being loved at the same time.
And in your experience with the Foundry, what are some of the most rewarding things that you've seen or that you've been a part of with the organization?
Wow, that's a hard one. We have lots of amazing stories. So I don't know, how do you rank? Obviously, children coming to know the Lord, making professions of faith is at the top of the list. But also, a family that I worked a lot with who both parents had lost their jobs. They ended up being evicted from their apartment because they couldn't pay rent. And so you had a family of 8 living in a vehicle. And we worked with that family to, partners with the Salvation Army. We're able to get them into a shelter. We're able to work with Goodwill to help mom and dad get jobs. We're able, we just utilized all of these partners in Bowling Green so that that family is safely and securely housed. Well, that's got to be at the top of the list. I've got a child who came who all of a sudden was missing from preschool, and the teacher's like, something's going on. I need you to follow up. And so we partner with a refugee advocate. We partner with pediatric dental because we find out that mom who doesn't speak English, who doesn't understand the American healthcare system, who doesn't have a phone and doesn't have transportation, had taken her child to the emergency room because they had an abscessed tooth but didn't understand. They gave her pain medicine and said, follow up with the pediatric dentist. And mom didn't understand that. So now, child's missing school because of this tooth issue. We were able to be the bridge to connect all the dots, to get the child seen by the pediatric dentist, get the tooth dealt with, the child on medication, the child's well and back the next week at school, eating lunch, smiling from ear to ear. Well, that's got to be at the top of the list, too. There's just so many stories of just meeting people and having the opportunity to really be the hands and feet of Christ. It's like when a life gets touched, there's nothing better.
Absolutely. And you mentioned something, you know, the barriers that sometimes that these families have, whether it's language, whether it's financial, it could be anything, but being able to remove those barriers or help them get over those barriers, that's a ministry. And some people don't always think, some people think, oh, well, this is just an organization or that's just an organization, but this is a ministry.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then within that ministry, for you as somebody who's seen what this ministry can do and how this ministry can change lives, how do you think th those families, when they go out and talk about the Foundry, when they talk about what has been done for them, how do you think that they're able to share that word, not only of what you all have done, but that word of God? Because what you're doing is through the power of God.
Yes. I mean, I've heard our families because we get referrals, right? We know that our families are out in the community talking about it because then we get little Susie who wants to get enrolled because somebody told her mom that this is where she needed to be. Because somebody said, hey, when my child was there, they helped me in this way. Oh, you need to go to the Foundry. You've got this happening. Oh, you definitely need to go talk to the people of the Foundry. They tell us, our parents tell us we are their family. um, I get kind of choked up because it's just so powerful to be able and an honor to be able to walk along somebody on their journey, right? One of the moms that I was talking with, she's a single mom and had a surprise little one later on in life. And so she is incredible. She works very, very hard. She needed preschool, and now her son is in our elementary school program. You know, she said, people talk about it takes a village to raise a child. She said, the Foundry has been my village. Um, and so, you know, that makes it all worthwhile because I know we're having such an impact that of course they're talking about it out in the community. And they know the faith component is important to them. I've had multiple moms come to me and say, I had my child in XYZ for childcare, and I didn't like the habits that they were picking up there. I didn't like the language they were using when they came home. I want to take my kids someplace so that they're learning about the Lord, someplace I know they're safe, someplace I know that they're loved.
And so, looking at the Foundry as it's continuing to grow and evolve and change, what does the Foundry, in your estimation, 5 years from now, what does the Foundry look like, or what do you hope the Foundry looks like?
I would love for us to be financially viable as far as growth goes. We are doing such an incredible work. There's such a need for it. I would love for us to be in the place that, yes, we are able to expand as much as possible because the resources are there to fund that ministry.
And so, how do we get to that point? How do we get to the point where the Foundry is financially viable, it's growing even bigger and is able to help everybody that comes through the doors asking or needing help?
I think it's really all about partnerships because one of the things that's awesome is when our families say, I've got this need, then we behind the scenes kind of have a list of, okay, people with this need, we know these people serve that need. We know this ministry is available to help with this specific kind of crisis. But we also have a list of donors and of business partners who say, I believe the work that you're doing is improving the city and the county for all of us. So I want to be able to continue being a part of that improvement. And so all of that, you know, it's about one person telling somebody else, hey, guess where I went today? I went to the Foundry and I volunteered and it was this awesome experience. And then that other person's like, I don't know what the Foundry is. What is that? And so as the word spreads and we have more and more partners, then we're able to grow the ministry more and more.
So if somebody's interested in connecting with the Foundry and making donations or volunteering or just getting more information about the Foundry, how can they do that?
I recommend people hop on our website. It's the Foundry BG, stands for Bowling Green.org. And they can find our contact information. There's volunteer information, there's donation information, and you can just kind of I call it creep around on people. That's what I do online. I want to creep around before I actually make that phone call so that I have a feel for what's happening.
And so, last question, if somebody doesn't live in Bowling Green or Kentucky or something like that, but they're interested in creating something like a foundry in their community, how would you tell them to go about even just the beginning steps of creating something like the foundry or something that it fits their community?
I would say lots of prayer. I know there was a lot of prayer walking on the neighborhood, around the neighborhood before the foundry actually launched. Lots of, just asking the Lord, but also just having conversations with the neighbors about what are the needs that you feel here. So that you're on track and you're aligned with what the actual needs are, not just what you perceive the needs to be.
Well, Shauna, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Do you have anything else you want to add before we let you go?
I just really want to encourage your listeners. This is such a fantastic podcast, just discussing what does it look like when the church is happening outside the church building. There was I think multiple prophetic words that were given around the time that Billy Graham's life was coming to a close, that we weren't going to see, the church in America wasn't going to see singular people being raised up the way we have in the past, but we're really going to experience revival when all of the people are raising up, when we have lots of leaders raising up in their community. And there's also been several words about the next great awakening happening in the community and in the workplace. That, there's a big chance a lot of these people who've never been inside a church building aren't going to just wake up one Sunday and walk in there. But they're still walking around with that God-sized hole in their heart, and they're waiting for their coworker, they're waiting for their child's teacher, they're waiting for somebody to share the good news with them. And not like in a preachy way, but just in a relationship-driven way. So I just want to encourage everybody out there, wherever the Lord has you planted, there are people around you who need to experience his love. So go out and love boldly.
I think that's a baby sermon, and I love it. I think that's great because it's so true. Because that's the whole point of the podcast. Because a lot of people will think that you have to be inside a church to be blessed or to work or to receive God's word. You could be anywhere. You look at the road to Damascus. It doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter what you're doing. There are ministries out there in places like the Foundry and other places. You can find a ministry, you can find a place to work, you can find a place to get blessed and to feel God's presence, and it doesn't have to be inside the walls of the church. And if you section yourself off to thinking that, you're probably going to miss the blessing that God has for you.
Absolutely.
Well, Shauna, I appreciate your time. You have been a great interview, as I knew you would be. This is Shauna Wood, the Executive Director of The Foundry. So if you want to find out more about The Foundry, go to thefoundrybg.org and learn more about The Foundry. If you want to donate, if you want to, contact, if you want to find out how to start a Foundry type place in your community, please connect with them. But for myself, Ryan Dearbone, the host of The Church with No Walls, thank you as always for tuning in. Take care and be blessed.
Come let us go to the church with no walls. You are my brother, you are my sister. From all over the world we are united in the house of God, in the church with no walls.